So if I take you back those many years ago, like those 5 years ago when you were this little child, like, and not this grown-up person, yeah? How was it for you in school then?
I felt like an idiot. Wasn't good at reading, wasn't good at writing. My handwriting was very scruffy, so you couldn't even read my numbers in maths.
And I guess in school, you had those books, I remember, with the different colors, right? I remember
like
you
different
getting stuck
colours.
at the Greek book
Yeah,
for a long time.
yeah.
Was that really visible to everyone?
I honestly don't know, but I did always hide it. Because I think at one point I sat next to like a bookshelf, so I just quickly swapped the book for a higher grade at one point. So everyone thought, she's average, it's okay. I don't even know if anyone was looking at me.
You were trying to hide it?
Yeah.
Because did you feel like you were that far behind that you needed to hide it?
Yeah. Like, let's say green is like the 5th to bottom, and white is like, there's like, I don't know, 12 bands, and white is like 10th, right? Everyone else was on white, and I was on green.
And it kind of started at the same level as you, and then just moved on.
Yeah.
You felt a bit stuck then, did you?
Yeah.
Yeah, because I remember you being really upset that you couldn't get to the orange box. Yeah. And I guess, how did that affect the rest of your time? Because this was with reading, right?
Mm-hmm.
There were still other things going on in school that were nice. Like, I know you enjoyed maths.
Even that didn't feel all that great, because like I said, my handwriting wasn't very readable. So whenever the teachers came to like mark maths or anything, they would like point at what that number was and say, "What's that number?" I'd have to say it because I could read my own handwriting, but they couldn't. So it was almost like, is my handwriting that bad? Like, I didn't really care if I got the answers right.
Yeah.
It's more focused on what I did wrong.
You discovered a way to get your spelling right, didn't you? I hadn't realized you were doing it. What were you doing?
So I basically got my phone. I pressed like, when I was searching.
When you say my phone, you mean my phone.
Yes, I mean your phone.
Thank
I
you.
basically, instead of typing, I pressed like the voice button thing.
Yeah, the microphone sign
Yeah.
on Google, yeah?
I said what it was. Then I saw it, I looked at it. Then obviously I pressed search, was looking at it. Then I went back to it. And like I deleted it and tried to type it in.
Yeah. So you kind of tried to teach yourself how to spell,
Yeah,
didn't
so
you?
I typed in what I could remember. Then in like the list of previously searched, it showed up, and I was like, okay, that's what it is.
That's the word. Yeah. Yeah, no, I hadn't realized you were doing that on my phone until I saw you. And I thought that was like a much better way than the calculator they've given you. But of course, you're not allowed to use that in your SATs. Because in school you had limited time, didn't you?
Yeah.
How did that work out for you? Like being given half an hour to do something?
I didn't complete anything in half an hour, especially now I'm reading stuff.
And did the other kids manage to do it?
Yeah.
How do you know that?
There was like, in the middle of the room, when you had done your work and if there was extra time or something, it was like a bunch of games in Foundation where you could just play.
Okay.
And you could show the teacher your work, and if it was like a page, like a whole page, right?
Yeah.
You can go to like the head principal's office, at least in Foundation, and get a sticker. And
Okay.
I read their work and stuff, and I thought it was okay. Then I read my work. I was like,
You had like
isn't mine good as well? I know it's shorter, but isn't it good?
because I used to write perfect 3 sentences, didn't you?
Yeah.
You used to always tell me that I have to get the spelling right, I have to get the punctuation right. And I'm trying to be imaginative. So you only got to about, like, what, 3 sentences?
3 sentences, but they were amazing 3 sentences.
How many did the other kids generally need to get to?
Well, some of them did like 5-sentence paragraph.
Yeah.
Some of them did a whole page. Some of them did even more. And I was like, had they done more than a whole page, or a whole page, or even 5 sentences? And I'd done 3.
Yeah, no, I remember your teachers telling me just how hardworking you were and how they felt bad because they felt like you worked so hard and the output was so little in comparison to how much hard work you put in. So in lockdown, we suspended time, didn't we? We said you take however much time it takes for you to do the work and just do as much work as you want to do, no more, right?
Yeah.
That helped, didn't it?
Yeah, that helped a lot. I realised my work was actually good because even though I'd done like 3 sentences or something, I showed those 3 sentences to you and you were like, these are amazing 3 sentences, but it took you so long. And I was like, yeah, because I need to get all these things right. And she said, and you said, like, okay, spellings you find hard. What do you find hard? I said spellings, I think it was like, I can't remember what it was, or something like that.
Was it adjectives? Thinking of the adjectives, because these sentences had to have adjectives and adverbs. And
Oh, it was thinking about like all of it together in one cohesive sentence straight away. And then you were like, okay, first of all, find a simple sentence, add adjectives, and then add adverbs. Second of all, don't worry about spellings right now because spellings aren't important as long as the word is readable. So I was like, so then I started writing, and it was just so much quicker. Because even though I had to write it out maybe 3 times, right, I could still do it a lot quicker. Let's say I wrote 5 simple sentences. I adapted all of those 5 sentences by adding adjectives, and then I added more stuff, and that was 5 sentences. And half an hour, what used to take me 3 sentences, now in half an hour I could write 5.
Yeah, so sometimes 8, couldn't you? I was quite surprised because your teacher said it should be about 11 sentences by year 5, but you could get to about 8. And you didn't have to write the whole thing 3 times, did you? You wrote the simple sentence and then you just added the adjectives and adverbs and stuff, and then maybe you copied it out nicely one more time sometimes because you wanted it to look nicer. Yeah. No, I remember that. I think that was the sort of stuff that I never realized was uncommon, that people didn't just think of the whole sentence in one go. I just always had to break things down into smaller parts and then put it back together as a whole thing. So I guess after that was when I started to talk to you about dyslexia and started to do some home tests and stuff, online tests to and we were fairly sure you were dyslexic, right?
Yeah.
Did that make it better, knowing that there was something?
Yeah. I mean, knowing that there was something, I wasn't just an idiot, made it like a lot better.
Yeah. And then I remember when on LinkedIn they added Dyslexic Thinking and Made by Dyslexia, were talking about all the, I guess, the positives aspects of being dyslexic, and you and I talked about empathy, didn't we?
Yeah.
Because I thought you were a superstar at empathy, and that was one of the qualities, wasn't it?
Yeah.
So how did it feel at that point where, because you went from, yes, I understand what's going on, to actually there might be some positives here?
Some positives? I mean, there's negatives, but there's probably more positives than negatives. And I'm like, okay, so I know what it is, I know why it happened. I guess, okay, I'm not an idiot. And then it's like, I guess if we go back to when I didn't know, I just thought I was an idiot, right? And then when I figured out superpowers and empathy and solving problems, and I was like, so I was just thinking back in my head, I mean, I could always solve issues on the playground like super quickly before the teachers could even get that I could solve the problem. And it's like, yes, woohoo! I've had it my whole life and I didn't even realize.
Yeah, you didn't realize it was a strength, did you?
I thought everyone had it. I mean, I know once I was talking to my friend, and they said, "You're really good at solving problems." I was like, so I kind of made a nickname in my head, Problem Solver, just to make me feel better about myself. But I don't think it was like a superpower. I just thought, I can solve problems pretty quickly. Maybe I should make it in like my head as a superpower. Problem Solver to the rescue! I can't imagine how it must have felt for you when, your whole life basically, you had no idea that you were dyslexic. At least, it was only a few years for me, but it was I'm not trying to say you're old, but it's quite a few years.
Thank you for no, but I know what you mean because I understand what you feel like. You know Mama, right? My brother, so he's like incredibly smart, and I like to think now that actually I'm smart in my own way, but in comparison to him, because everything was harder, I just did feel like I wasn't very clever. I mean, I felt like my superpower was hard work. I always taught myself that if I work hard, I'll get there. And so I was, and not giving up, being stubborn about things, like being tenacious. I always thought that was what I was good at. I was hardworking, and you couldn't get rid of me very easily. But that's kind of what I thought my superpower was. So when people told me, at work or at university that I was clever, I just never believed them. Because I was like, oh, you don't know what clever is, you've not met my brother. Because I was just I always had this thing of clever being people who just got things quickly and easily. Whereas even now, reading a really deep research paper is quite hard for me. Yeah. So, the amount of times Daddy has to step in and read something for me and give me a gist of it, and then I can go back into it and read it and make sense of it. But those kind of things just made me feel like I wasn't very clever because, why could Daddy understand it and I couldn't first time? Why did I need somebody to talk me through it? But I've been reading about it, and some people with dyslexia, they do better if somebody verbally talks through them. How did it feel preparing for your SATs? Because that was the year that I guess you actually got diagnosed, didn't you? You got your diagnosis.
Preparing for SATs? It's actually pretty decent because you basically knew I had dyslexia already. So you told me a load of tips and tricks about what you used in your studies and stuff. And I mean, it was good. It worked. I got much higher marks in all my tests.
You passed them, didn't you?
Yeah,
that was the main thing. You
passed.
You passed. That was very exciting for you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But my teachers weren't exactly happy with the way I did it. So, I mean, I showed them the way I did it and how I worked, and I said I didn't read the text, and they said, okay, that's a good way of learning how to prepare for the SATs, but in the actual thing, just read the text first. And
yeah, so this is like the reading comprehension where I said to you that reading the whole text takes too much time.
Yeah.
So maybe read the questions first and then look for a word in the questions that you can then find in the text and then read that sentence, right?
Yeah.
I mean, that was one of the things that when I taught you the tips and tricks, I didn't think I was teaching you tips and tricks for people with dyslexia. I thought I was just teaching you how to study smart. And the ways that I had discovered. And then you got diagnosed, and then the person who diagnosed you told me that Ananya has been telling her all these things you taught her, and how did you know to teach her this? And I was like, surely everybody does this. And so I asked your daddy.
Yeah.
And then he went like, no, Asheeka, nobody does that.
So that's when you realised you have dyslexia.
Yeah, and I'm still at university, so I got diagnosed through university, and yes, turns out I had it too.
And just say, I think there should be like almost like a, I guess, mandatory training course, because 1 out of 10 people have dyslexia. So if you get 100 people in the room, 10 of them would have dyslexia, and I bet at least some of them don't even know it.
Yeah, and you're right about it would be good to have training for teachers, because from my experience with your teachers, all of them have cared really deeply.
Yeah.
They loved you. They loved, they all told me how clever you were, how you were dancing around the classes, and how much they'd miss you when you moved on. And so, but they were all like really upset by what a struggle it was for you. And like I'm saying, some of them to the point of being in tears. So I think they would like to be able to help as well. So it's definitely not lack of wanting to. It's just, it took lockdown to happen for me to have to homeschool you, for me to like basically analyze you for 4 months, because I'm an analyst and I'm a problem solver. So that's what I did. I just went into it and tried to figure out. So it took a lot to come, and teachers can't do that with every child. They have a big class, they have a curriculum to go through, they have things to do. It's not the same, so it's not easy to pick out these things.
If there's 3 years, each year has about 90 kids. So, that's in the infant school, the right older school they had.
Yeah.
But, so that's a lot of kids.
Yeah.
And if you divide, and then I guess 1 out of 10 of those kids have dyslexia, and I'm telling you, not
How many kids is that then?
Huh?
90 kids, 3 years. How many kids is that?
Oh, why did I do this on myself? So that's 270 kids.
So what's 10% of 270?
Oh, it's 27.
Yeah, there you go. So 27
And none
kids.
of them would be diagnosed because they're under the age of 8.
Yeah, and so that's 27 kids who might be growing up thinking that they're rubbish, and they really, really aren't. So what if you could only give one message to people? What was that one thing you'd want people to remember?
So, like, I guess, from a place, when you're talking about dyslexia, I guess, actually know what it is. Like, it's not just negatives, it's not just positives. Like, I guess it's almost like a balance scale.
Yeah.
Like, you have to balance it, but with both of those points.
Yeah, talk about it with a place of real knowledge, right?
Yes.
So you want people to make themselves aware of what it really
know
is.
what it is,
Yeah.
rather than, oh, you can't read.
Yeah, which that isn't useful, is it?
Sorry, that drives me crazy.
No. Okay, no, fair enough. So you want people to actually try and understand what it is, and maybe if they understand it better, it'll be easier for everyone who does have dyslexia, diagnosed or undiagnosed, to be able to just get on in the world in a happy place.
Yeah.
Yeah, and my one thing, if I can have a one thing, is exactly that. Make yourself aware of it, because it's heartbreaking to think that there are children out there in this world who are thinking they're rubbish when they really, really aren't.